Hi, welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another action-packed weekend, and welcome back from that midweek action. Very entertaining football. We did watch very agonizing results and victorious moments to carry on from some of your favorite teams there. The biggest text for me was AC Milan beating up against Real Madrid by 3 goals to 1. Alvaro Morata, another former Real Madrid player there, on target in that particular game. Very decent performance from Paul Fonseca's side. Then Arsenal did lose by a goal to nil against Inter Milan in a game that I did think that they were hard done by, conceding that penalty in the manner in which they did that handball against Mikel Moreno. Nothing deliberate, but they conceded a penalty, but also weren't given one on the other end when Jan Stoma, I think, punched, was it Kai Havertz, when he missed that ball. Anyway, it was the first loss for the Gunners there in the UEFA Champions League this season. And then Liverpool incredibly beating up against RB Leipzig by 4 goals to 0. Cody Gakpo on target in that one, as well as Luis Diaz bagging a hat-trick. He's in such incredible form, by the way. And then, of course, Manchester City were beaten up by 4 goals to 1 by Sporting Lisbon. That is Ruben Amorim's side. Remember, Ruben Amorim takes over as Manchester United manager on November 11th at the kick-off of the November international break. And then, of course, we cannot move on without mentioning that Aston Villa also suffered their first defeat in this campaign's UEFA Champions League when they were beaten by 1 goal to 0 by Club Brugge. Again, another penalty in that particular game. Now, what particularly happened in that incident is what the referee last season in the game between Arsenal and Bayern Munich referred to as a childish mistake. Goalkeeper places the ball on the floor, it's ready for a restart, and then the defender, that was Tyrone Mings, who then, picks the ball by his hand and slides it back to the goalkeeper. So the referee is like, ball is already in action, literally, and it's a penalty, so he awards that. Last season, the referee termed it as a childish mistake when Gabriel Magalhaes did it with David Raya, so Arsenal may have to watch that incident and be mindful that now that can be given as a penalty. Not that it wasn't a penalty last season, but referees are more awoke to that particular kind of play. And then, of course, Chelsea did have another brilliant result as they beat up against AFC Noah in the UEFA Conference League. Christopher Nkunku scoring a double in that one. Mukalo Mudryk, I think, was on target in that one, as well as João Felix with the burst in that particular game. Tosin Aderabio among the others on target. Personally, I'm impressed in the manner with which Enzo Maresca is deploying all his players. He's got so many players in his squad, but he's practically setting up literally a different lineup for every competition. When it comes for the Carabao Cup, when it goes to the UEFA Conference League, when it goes to the Premier League, it's a much changed lineup. So he's got that flexibility, and so far he's making things work at all levels. And then, of course, the other decent result was Manchester United beating up against PAOK Salonika in the UEFA Europa League there. Amadou Diallo on target for both goals in that particular game. Ruud van Nistelrooy was pretty delighted with that result ahead of their fixture against Leicester City this weekend, a team they just beat up recently in the Carabao Cup by 5 goals to 2. So, anyways, welcome back from all that incredible action. That's the bit of summary that I can afford to give you as of now. But let's now switch our focus on match day 11 of the Premier League, because it is getting underway on Saturday with a good number of games also that will be coming your way on Super Sunday. Unfortunately or fortunately, we will not be having an early kickoff this weekend, because all games do kick off at 6 p.m. That is East African time. And without any further ado, here is the run of fixtures that will be coming your way this particular weekend. Like I did say, fixtures do kick off at 6 p.m. and Brentford will be at home against an on-form AFC Bournemouth in very high spirits after they had just beaten up against Manchester City by 2 goals to 1 in that recent game, while Brentford on the other side did fall against Fulham by 2 goals to 1. those two goals there that Fulham managed to score to cancel out Brentford's lead that they thought they could hang on and get all 3 points. Crystal Palace will be at home against Fulham in a London derby, while West Ham are at home against Everton. Wolverhampton Wanderers will be at home against Southampton, while Brighton and Hove Albion are at the Amex Stadium where they will host Manchester City. I think that is a very, very decent game to look out for. Really, Pep Guardiola would want to avoid, I think, a 4th consecutive defeat following that loss against Bournemouth, Sporting CP, and the other against Nottingham in the Carabao Cup. So those are the last 3 fixtures. All those are losses. Probably could be the first time that is happened to him in his Manchester City career. Brighton will be looking forward to making that the 4th, and they are not in bad shape. Danny Welbeck has been making things happen for this Brighton and Hove Albion side, and they're just in the right shape to, give Manchester City a test, perhaps, and perhaps even go ahead and beat them. But we'll wait to see what Fabian Hatzler has to assemble. While Pep Guardiola, despite welcoming back Kyle Walker and Kevin De Bruyne, he still has a number of injury issues or concerns to worry himself about, although he doesn't dwell much on those. So, Brighton versus Man City, that will be at 8:30 p.m., while arguably for me the biggest game of the weekend will be between Liverpool and Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa returning from the UEFA Champions League where they suffered their first defeat when they face off an on-form Liverpool side. Very on-form Liverpool side. We're talking about an Aston Villa side who not so far back were beaten up by Tottenham Hotspurs, I think by 4-1. So their recent form hasn't been really, really pretty good, but they are coming up against a very, very decent Liverpool side who are in very high spirits. They're winning almost all their games, which is quite incredible. They have the momentum on their side. So I'm sure this is a game that comes just right in time for them to face against a stubborn Aston Villa side, which very often times you're not sure what it is going to bring you on a given day. So they do come in this particular fixture. That's for the case of Liverpool in the Premier League on the back of a 2-1 victory against Brighton and Hove Albion. But like I just mentioned, Aston Villa did suffer a 4-1 defeat against Tottenham Hotspurs. That game will be coming at 11 p.m. East African time to complete your Saturday. And then on Super Sunday, games will kick off a little earlier as compared to Saturday, because the early games will kick off at 5 p.m. East African time, and we'll have Manchester United up against Leicester City, while Nottingham Forest will be at home against Newcastle. Now, we're talking about a Nottingham Forest side that are very in on form, I think, which has seen them rise to 3rd place on the Premier League table with 19 points, behind Manchester City and Liverpool, of course, leading the summit, while we're also talking about a Newcastle side that are in good spirits following their 1-0 victory over Arsenal last weekend. We all know that Nuno Espirito Santo was just voted Premier League Manager of the Month. That's for the month of October, while his striker, Chris Wood, who is equally in incredible form, did score a brace last weekend as they beat up against, I think, West Ham by 3-0, did win the Premier League Player of the Month accolade. So they're really, really in good spirits ahead of this particular fixture. Not that it will be any easier test for Newcastle or for Nottingham Forest, but it is one game to watch this weekend. As far as Manchester United versus Leicester City is concerned, again, like I mentioned in the preamble of this particular episode, that Manchester United had just recently beaten up against Leicester City by 5-2 in the Carabao Cup. This could be a match change, Leicester City side that Steve Cooper will assemble to face up against Ruud van Nistelrooy in his last game in official interim charge of Manchester United. I'm sure he will want to hand over the relay stick to Ruben Amorim in high spirits with another victory to his name. So clearly, it's going to be a huge test both for Manchester United and Leicester City. One that I do think Manchester United may be a little more hyped up as compared to Leicester City. Like I keep saying, Ruben Amorim will be taking over very soon, so players are going to be quite keen to try and impress the new manager because they know he'll be watching and they want him to be in the good side of his books as soon as he walks through those doors at Carrington. Anyways, the other game we'll see Tottenham Hotspurs host Ipswich Town. Again, Tottenham Hotspurs, they did just suffer, I think, a 3-2 loss to Galatasaray on Thursday in the Europa League there. Victor Osimhen scoring a brace in that particular game, missed narrowly to get a hat-trick in that game. Tottenham Hotspurs finished the game down to 10 men after suffering the red card in the second half there for one of their debutants. So clearly, it's a game that Ange Postecoglou will want to put behind him by picking maximum points up against this Ipswich Town side. I mean, if you cannot press Ipswich for victory and you Tottenham Hotspurs, then there will be questions placed on Ange Postecoglou's side, especially knowing that they welcome back some of their key players from injury, including Ruud there. And then, of course, the biggest game of the weekend is the London Derby between Chelsea and Arsenal. What a game. What a timing does this game come at? Kickoff will be at 7:30 p.m. That's East African time on Super Sunday when the Blues host their rivals, the Gunners, who they are very capable of beating. So that's the run of fixtures that is going to be coming your way. But our preview will focus on the biggest game of the weekend when Chelsea do host Arsenal. Historically, both sides do know how to beat up against one another. So I do not think that's a point of contention. But recent form is not in any favor for this Arsenal side. They've lost about 3 fixtures recently. That's against Bournemouth. They've lost against Newcastle. They've lost against Inter Milan. In between, they are managing a couple of draws. That's a draw against Manchester City 2-2, a draw against Liverpool 2-2. While the 2 victories that they have in there, as far as Premier League football is concerned, were against Southampton by 3-1 and against Leicester City by 4-2. Not to mention that they did also register a 3-0 victory against Preston North End in the Carabao Cup. So that's the kind of form they are in. But the first 2 consecutive defeats, that's against Newcastle and Inter Milan in recent times. So they will be eager and almost desperate to bounce back against a Chelsea side that they could not beat at Stamford Bridge last season because this particular fixture ended in a 2-2 draw, for those of you that do remember. Declan Rice scoring the first consolation in that particular game. But Arsenal are going to be facing a very much changed side as compared to the one they did face last season, who they by the way beat up against by 5-0 at the Emirates Stadium. That's in the reverse fixture of last season. Enzo Maresca, like I did mention in the preamble, is getting so many things right with this Chelsea side, and they do have an incredible Cole Palmer, who has scored 27 goals, managed about 17 assists, and created about 29 big chances in his 62 appearances with the Blues. So that's the kind of team that Arsenal will be facing. Of course, their defense, Chelsea have looked shaky, but Arsenal have not looked any solid in recent times as well as far as Premier League football is concerned, because they've conceded as many goals as Manchester United and 1 goal more than Tottenham Hotspurs, because they've conceded 11 goals in 10 Premier League fixtures. Who would have thought about that at the start of the campaign? So, while Chelsea's defense of Wesley Fofana and Levi Colwill, normally the one that Enzo Maresca looks to for the Premier League engagements, is still not at its best. Arsenal are not in shape as well on the other side. Of course, you do expect Robert Sanchez to be in goal for Chelsea. You do expect Malo Gusto. You do expect Marco Cucurella to be in that back line, or Richard James to be in that back line at the right fullback. And then that midfield that he faces these days is Moises Caicedo alongside Romeo Lavia, who he does say that they give him a good balance when they play in that double pivot for the Blues. And then, of course, that means that for most of the time, Enzo Fernandez has been relegated to the bench, but he did start that game against FC Noah in midweek. Then, of course, up front, Nicholas Jackson is his preferred candidate to lead the Lions. Cole Palmer following in behind there. That's in front of the double pivot of the midfield. He fancies to go with Pedro Neto on one side and then Noni Madueke on the other side. But should any of those be absent, of course, the likes of Mukalo Modric, Christopher Nkuku are all available to look onto. João Felix. I mean, Chelsea just do have, I think, arguably, pound for pound, one of the best Premier League squads. They do face an Arsenal side who have really lacked form. They've been hampered by so many injuries. It's been a start-stop for the Gunners, but that not excusing them. They've just been in poor form, most of their players. William Saliba in that defense has not been at the top of his game. Gabriel Magalhaes has suffered through a bit of a knock that he did suffer in that game against Liverpool, and he's not really been the same player. He needs to, pull his stockings up. Ben White in there, Urian Timber, of course, Thomas Partey, who has been played at right back to the detest of most Arsenal fans. He's one of those players that has been the standout player in Arsenal's turbulent times. He's really kind of tried to step up, but things have really not worked out for the team as a whole. Declan Rice, this one did meet the UEFA Champions League fixture against Inter Milan through a fractured toe, and up to yesterday, Mikel Arteta was saying he had not yet trained, but would be assessed to see if he can feature in this particular game ahead of the international break. If you're an Arsenal fan, if you're Mikel Arteta, would you risk him knowing that if he does exacerbate that particular injury, it could cost him perhaps a month out or even more, as opposed to leaving him out for this particular fixture? Or do you take the risk? Anyways, do let me know what your thoughts are. So, Mikel Merino, this one is still struggling to get his footing in this Arsenal side. You really sort of struggle to know what his strongest suit is. So he's really not yet shined. Things have not yet clicked for him. Perhaps we may have to be a little more patient with him, I think, for the Arsenal fans, just like they had to be with Kai Havertz. And then Kai Havertz has just looked offbeat in recent times. It's been played in what appeared to be like a 4-4-2 system, playing alongside Leandro Trossard, and again, things have not really worked well for Leandro Trossard. Then Gabriel Martinelli has been one of those, kind of spark in this poor Arsenal side of recent times, and then Bukayo Saka also there, also available. Gabriel Jesus, I'm sure, will start on the bench because he's another player, Arsenal player, struggling for form. The big news for the Gunners is that they did welcome back Martin Odegaard on the turf. He did come on and feature in that loss to Inter Milan. Ethan Nwaneri again did come off the bench to, show his credentials, although a lot of Arsenal fans do think that Mikel Arteta, he's just snail walked into easing this youngster in this Arsenal side, giving him lesser minutes than he actually does deserve. Again, you do let me know what your thoughts are on Ethan Nwaneri and the kind of playing time he is being accorded. Is it enough? We did see him come on earlier on, as early on, I think as around the 60th or 65th minute in that 1-0 loss against Newcastle. But again, things didn't really happen for him. Neither were they happening for the whole team, so you cannot really blame him for that. So that is the kind of fixture we do expect. A very high contested fixture. I think the midfield, whoever dominates that midfield, will have the edge in terms of winning this particular game. And then, of course, Chelsea will have that area threat from the Arsenal defenders when it comes to set pieces, so they may want to avoid them as much as they can. We do remember a couple of seasons ago, they were hard done by through a set piece, Gabriel Magalhaes scoring for Arsenal to beat up against Chelsea in a 1-0 victory. That was last season, but one. So that's a threat, but that midfield battle will determine who wins this game for me. And then, because if Chelsea can suffocate that Arsenal midfield and push them to the wide areas, then perhaps they may have a chance at containing them. And then you'll really have to frustrate Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli on the other side to further limit that danger. As far as Arsenal are concerned, they will have to contend with Pedro Neto, the good runs of Nicholas Jackson, and then Noni Madueke on a good day can be a good dribbler. So it's going to be a very entertaining fixture that I envision ahead of Super Sunday. As far as recent form is concerned between the two sides, in the last 5 fixtures, Arsenal have beaten up against Chelsea at least 4 times, the other time ending in a draw. That was the 2-all draw that we did witness last season. But as far as things go, the reverse fixture ended like in a 5-0 victory, like I did mention, while last season but one, Arsenal managed to beat up against Chelsea by 0-0 at Stamford Bridge and beat them by 3-1 at the Emirates Stadium. So that's been the context of this particular fixture in recent times. But like I said, a lot has changed, not just for Chelsea, but for Arsenal in the way they've been assembling themselves in recent times. When you look at Arsenal's last form, they did take a gamble in the summer that Martin Odegaard will not get injured, because for the previous 2 seasons, he wasn't getting injured that much, and that is what informed their decision to let go of Emile Smith-Rowe, who they let go to Fulham. Then they loaned out Fabio Vieira back to his former club in FC Porto. Then, and that was their biggest gamble, because they had no natural replacement for Martin Odegaard. Then he goes and gets injured during an international break in September, and he had not featured until Wednesday when they faced off with Inter Milan. So clearly, whatever they tried to conjure beyond that, without the presence of Martin Odegaard, has been one that did not really impress most Arsenal fans, and it will be very, very big food for thought for Mikel Arteta going into the January transfer window, especially in the wake of the resignation of Edu Gaspar Dawood that we did discuss earlier on in the week. He did step down from his position as sporting director at the Gunners because he's expected to take things over as CEO, probably with a much bigger salary, with a much bigger responsibilities at Evangelos Marinakis' group there that does own Nottingham Forest and Olympiacos, those clubs among, and they're looking forward to, invest their money more elsewhere. Anyways, do let me know what your thoughts are about all those fixtures. Yes, we did not take a deep dive in all of them as we would have appreciated, but that is the gist of it. That's the picture that I can paint for you in the shortest bit of time. I hope it is short, but do let me know what your thoughts are on those fixtures, especially Brighton versus Man City, Liverpool versus Aston Villa, Arsenal versus Chelsea, as well as Manchester United versus Leicester City. Do let me know what your thoughts are on those particular fixtures, not to mention Nottingham Forest up against Newcastle. Otherwise, stay blessed, and I'll see you next time. Do not forget to comment, like, and share if you're new to the channel so we can continue to grow. Stay blessed.